ladies, gentlemen, whoever's watching this podcast or YouTube or social media or Spotify. This is often imitated, never duplicated, Mr. Main Event and the show, CJ Evans, and you are Drinking at Mo.
All right, everybody. Want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinking at Mo's be a brand ambassador. They encourage everybody to break out of that comfort zone, live their best self, which, hey, that's what got me starting the podcast. But they got great clothing, great apparel, t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, hats, all that good stuff. Be sure, link will be in the description, and use the code Drinkin' at Mo's to get 10% off your order. Let's fucking go.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Drinkin' at Mo's. Big Mo here. As always, YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, share, all the good stuff. It helps with that pain in the butt algorithm. Treat that like button like what Mike Bennett said on Rampage.
You punch him in the wiener, then you pull him in, and you hit him with a pile driver.
All right. So, today I have with me the show, CJ Evans. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Definitely been looking forward to it. Had a couple people that I know come on to your show, and I just wanted to be like, you know what, who better to bring on the show than the show? You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally get it. Now, I've had quite a few people on. I'm inching towards 200 episodes. Who was it that I had on that, I think I have an idea, but by all means, enlighten me.
The first person I believe that I saw you had on was Johnny Badger.
Okay, yeah, that was a good one.
The man, the myth, not so legend, but Johnny Badger. And then Sound Guy Zach Productions. That's another good friend of mine, so I know him, and you had him on, and I watched both of your episodes with them.
Oh yeah, they're actually both of those episodes. At least the audio versions are. Last I checked, they're both on the top 10 on the audio platforms. So
yeah,
we'll see if we can get this one on there too.
Yeah, I actually I listened to both of them on Spotify. That's how I watched them, because both of them, I was sitting there and I saw it pop up on my feed on Facebook, and I was like, dang, I got to look this guy up. So I looked it up and I saw Johnny, and then like a couple weeks later I saw Zach, and I was like, well, I need to get on the ball. Apparently I'm missing out on a party, so I need to hop on. You know what I'm
saying? Oh yeah, no, I you know what, I'm wanting to say I had both of those guys, relatively close together. So yeah. Those were both fun ones. I mean, like I said, I've had quite a few people on, inching close to 200. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be right there.
Absolutely, for sure.
So first thing I like to start off each guest with is, I mean, you watched both of those episodes. What got you started as a fan? And then what got you started finally deciding to make the leap into the business?
So my story is a little bit similar to other people, but it's also a little bit different. So it kind of does like a little like back and forth thing. So I mean, I've been watching wrestling since I was like 5, 6 years old. And obviously, I became a fan watching it on television, just seeing the way that the athleticism mixed with like the art of entertaining people back and forth. It really captivated me at a young age, and I was able to, by like watching it, it was something that me and my family would do every week. Like we'd gather around the TV, and it would be like me, my mom, and my granny, and we would sit there and watch wrestling every week. And that was like our family get together that we would do. And it was funny because my granny's favorite was Batista, and then my mom's favorite was always John Cena. And then I loved at the time back when Jeff Hardy was my main favorite person, but then obviously, I've got others that have come and gone throughout the time, but at the beginning, that was the initial captivator was Jeff Hardy. And then, so I started at 5, 6 years old watching wrestling. And then I would say probably when I started about 13, 14-ish years old is when I was like, I really want to do this. I want to try this out. So, I mean, obviously, like us as kids had always done like little wrestling around stuff as kids, like out there doing like not really backyard stuff, but like, you always like see it on TV and you're like, oh, we're gonna go try it on trampoline and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Yep.
I finally told my mom, I was like, I really want to try this and I want to see if I can do this. And then she was like, well, where can we go? And there was a little place right down, like it was probably about 20 minutes from my house that was in Carthage, North Carolina. And it was the Carthage Fairgrounds. And they had a building that they rented out there that had the ring set up, and it was Power Pro Wrestling. And they
Mm.
did shows every Saturday night. And it was like affiliated with some of the same people that started with like the Hardy Boys and stuff like that. And if unless I'm mistaken, one of the main guys that ran it was his name was Tracy Cadell, and that was actually Trevor Lee's dad. So Trevor Lee now is known as Cameron Grimes, but Trevor Cadell, it was his dad, and he was one of the owners of that company. And I started going there every Saturday watching the shows, and every Saturday I'd watch the show. Finally, my mom and me were at a show one night, and I just went up to the guy, one of the owners, and I was like, "Hey, man, do y'all do training here?" And he was like, "Yeah, every Tuesdays and Thursdays." And I was like, "Well, I want to join." So my mom ended up having to do like a whole waiver deal and had to sign for me to, even though I was like 13, 14 years old, she had to sign, for the waiver for if in case I get hurt or anything like that. So that's
Yeah.
when I initially started training, was when I was like 13, 14 years old. But like I said, been a fan since I was 5, 6 years old.
Oh yeah, no, that's. I mean, I love hearing those stories of people growing up, and it's kind of a family thing. I mean, I got started watching, you know, dating myself. I just turned 40, like back in July, but back in the 80s, WCW still going strong, and WCW Saturday Night, and
Yeah.
begging my parents sometimes, man, can we not go to church? I want to watch wrestling. And then that was more my thing growing up for me, because I didn't really, besides for a little bit with my brother, I didn't really have anybody to watch it with. And then some of the things you talked about with like people captivating you, I know that's what really drew me in, was the crowd reactions to the people coming out there. And
Yeah.
it was just thinking, man, that would be so awesome to one day come out and get even half of that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a big part that played in my life starting out was seeing how entertained people were and just bringing that, like having the feeling that I was giving other people the feeling that I had as a kid. And I wanted that feeling. It's so hard to explain, but it's like when you're a kid and you're watching it, you're like, you just think it's like the biggest thing ever. And it's like, it made my day, like to go to school, come home, be like, oh, I get to watch wrestling tonight. So then I wanted to do that for other people. Like I wanted to be the guy that made people look forward to getting off work to be able to go watch a wrestling show, or the person that got off work or school to go home and watch wrestling, because that, I just wanted to give back to that same feeling that I got as a child.
Oh, that totally understandable. I know that, hell, that's the way I feel oftentimes with the wrestling that I watch now. And then there's shows that are running now here local to me that I have to drive about an hour to get back home, and they're starting opening doors or like right after I get back. So I'm like, oh, all right, let's get on down there.
Yeah.
But and then you talked the age you talked about that you started, that is something that initially I didn't think was all that common. But I mean, nowadays, I mean, look at some of the people out there
Yeah.
that are getting started at relatively young ages. I mean, Billy Starks, who I've also had on the show, blowing up, going over there, Ring of Honor. Nick Wayne
Yeah.
doing big things, AEW right now. And Oh God, I know Jordan Oliver got started relatively young as well, and just realizing how much more of a career they have in front of them,
Yeah.
and the how far they've come already.
Oh yeah, for
It's
sure.
just amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely that's a big motivator for me is that when you watch the younger talent still getting signed and or getting major appearances, it really inspires and gives you that drive to be like, okay, like it's like even though like I mean I'm, 28, I'm about to be 29 here in the next couple months, but it still inspires me to be like, okay, like you don't got to be in your 30s or 40s to get signed. You can get signed at an earlier age and still make an impact on whichever company picks you up. And that's definitely a motivator in what I try to have in going forward and my constant, getting out of my head to be like, hey, just because you're 28 and haven't been signed or haven't been looked at yet doesn't mean, you know what I'm saying? Because like a lot of the stories and the seminars that I've been through, a big thing they tell me is that it's not really about how good of a competitor you are. It's more so about how good of an entertainer you are
Mm.
and how being in the right place at the right time. It's not so much about, I mean, you can be the best athlete in the world, doesn't mean you're going to get that push because somebody else can come along and if they have more charisma or more like I guess like they can make more money, I guess. It plays a big factor in it. So that's something that I really work towards is me as a character is more so like I try to be very entertaining as a wrestler, but I also try to be athletic to be believable, but not just to the point where it's like, oh, well, I can sling people around. You know what I'm saying? I want it
You
to
know,
mean something.
oh, I totally get you there. And you know what? You're already getting out there and doing some pretty big things from what I've been able to see. And one this episode will be most likely coming out after these shows,
Mm,
but there is a show I'm wanting to say this weekend
yep,
where you're going up. It's Next Level Pro Wrestling
sir.
going up for the social media title. I
Yeah,
was seeing some of the promos and stuff, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
you're drawing me in here.
So, Next Level is definitely one of my main promotions that I work for on a regular basis because of the amount of it's just it gives me that old school vibe and it reminds me of when I watched wrestling as a kid. And I really love the environment of Next Level, the people that I get to be around. It's a great place to have. I mean, honestly, it's a great place and a pleasure to be because it's not one of those companies that you just go to work. It's like most of the shows we do, like the show coming up this Saturday is it's going to be at Falcons Children's Home and we're getting to do this show for all these kids and it really I like every time we get to go to Falcon it really makes me happy because I get to see all those kids and it gives like just to see how excited they are because these kids they look forward to this and they wait months to see us come back to do these shows and when I get to step on and be at those events it really warms my heart so I love being a part of Next Level especially with a lot of the different people I get to share the ring with. I got a lot of good opportunities with Next Level, and I'm very thankful to be there.
That is awesome, and I can only imagine, doing things, especially for the children's home there, and seeing the reactions on the kids' faces,
Oh yeah,
whether they're cheering or they're screaming at the bad guy. You know, I can only imagine the feeling that gives anybody in the locker room. I know for me, I didn't get my start watching independent wrestling until I was stationed in the Navy in San Diego, and I like Googled pro wrestling in San Diego, and it happened to boom. There popped up a show, and it happened to be a elementary school fundraiser
hmm
for that show that was like right before one of their big events. So I'm like, you know what? Why not? Why not go in there and hell? Ever since I ended up meeting a guy that used to run a promotion here in town where I live in Omaha, Nebraska. who has since passed away, God rest his soul. But I met him there, and then boom, got a ton of my friends that I've met through wrestling. And, seeing the kids' reactions that night when you were mentioning that, that kind of reminded me of that reaction I was seeing off of a lot of them. And, it's something else seeing it through the eyes of a young kid, remembering the way that we talked about giving people the same feeling that you got growing up.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of along the same lines there.
It's definitely been a weird journey, I guess, because starting out that young, it had its pros and cons. I started out, I went in and was doing like my training, doing what I was supposed to do. I ended up like getting hurt like probably maybe 2 months before I was supposed to debut. And I actually didn't get to debut that young because I messed my knee up. I ended up tearing my cartilage in my knee. It was my meniscus. And I don't remember exactly what happened that led to it, but it was like I took some wrong hit or a bad bump and my knee just was killing me. I went to the doctor. They told me what it was. I ended up having to get surgery to fix it. And that was on my right knee. And I went through the surgery, went through the crutches, blah, 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 whatever. And then my mom was like, no, you're not going back. I'm not going to let you go back and get hurt. Well, so then I didn't I didn't go back to any kind of training or anything till I was like probably like 19, like when I was old enough to make my own decisions at that point. So then like I made the decision. I was like, hey, look, I'm going back. You know, this is like something I'm definitely dedicated to doing. And I mean, my mom was a lot cooler with it then because I was basically, I'm grown at that point.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, if you thought this much about it and you want to go back, then go back. So that's when I went back, started, finishing up the stuff I had to do, got in the ring, started working shows. And then now, we kind of just like fast forward through just doing indie shows and stuff until now I ran into Tony James, aka Hang Time. He's the owner of Next Level Professional Wrestling, and he's also the owner of the 2-6 Wrestling Academy. And he was booked on a show that I was booked on. And I went up and talked to him because he had a table set up that had the 2-6 Wrestling Academy banner. And I was like, hey man, do you run your own training academy? And he's like, yeah. So I obviously, got the details from it, started training with him, and I've been going there ever since. Now, I think from the time I went with him till now has been about a little over a year, maybe a year and a half. And I've been training there. So I go there 1 or 2 days every week at least. And, put in my reps there to get that weekly, constantly go in the grind. And then he has a great mentality for the business because he's been in it so long, but also because he's really big on taking old school mentality, putting a new age twist on it to where you can really captivate those older fans and the newer fans. So you're not really splitting it down the middle, because I've noticed that's a big deal in wrestling nowadays is you've got those fans that are old school fans and they only want to see old school style wrestling. They want to see you work, an arm bar or something for 10 minutes, but they don't like the flippity stuff. But then you go to the younger generation and that's all they want to see is flippity stuff, spot to spot to spot. And so I try to do an intricate style of mixing those together to where it's like, if somebody watches my match, it doesn't matter whether they're 15 or if they're 55 or 60. They're going to sit there and be like, you know what, that kid's entertaining. I like watching his stuff. And Tony does a lot of, he works with us really detailed into going into how to do it right, how to do it safe. And I really am thankful to be a part of 2-6 Wrestling Academy as well.
I was going to say, because you talked about Next Level Pro and having that old school feel, because I was going to ask you what the shows there are like for people of my listeners that might not be in the North Carolina area.
Mm-hmm.
And I am kind of one of those guys that I do like the old school. I like that intensity, that grit. But then, hell, I'll admit, I do like some of the flippy stuff too. I mean, one of my favorite matches that I ever got to see live was actually Kenny Omega versus Vikingo.
Mhm.
I was there live for that one, and my God, the Vikingo, the stuff that guy can pull off is just
It's pretty,
insane.
yeah, it's definitely incredible. To answer your question, I feel like the best way I can explain it would be, so the way that Next Level really is ran is that we have like a definite, like a grand entrance. So it makes you feel like a superstar coming out. You're not just coming out through a curtain. Anybody that's been to our shows, they see the entrance way with the lights and all these different things. And obviously, they're always evolving and adding things to it.
Yeah.
One of the bigger things that we've been working on is trying to have that old school feel with, like, we have like a podium that is set off to the side. So we it gives that old like NWA vibe, and
Yeah.
you can go straight from like, you can be talking on the podium to like cutting promos or whatever, and you can go straight into a match or go into the ring from there, or vice versa. You could finish your match, get interviewed after your match, and it really gives that old school vibe because it's not just seeing a bunch of social media promos. You can also see it
Yeah.
live, and I feel like that brings the experience as a whole up, because then people don't know what to expect, because like they know they go to a wrestling show, they're going to get to see 6 7 matches, but they don't know, like, Tony really pushes it in our heads about working stories. It's not about the moves, it's about telling a story. So we really try to captivate that at all of our events.
Oh yeah, no, that is actually something unique. And what I've mentioned in a few different episodes, uniqueness in pro wrestling these days is kind of few and far between. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's so much out there that, yeah, there's a reason that, stuff can be seen all over the
Yeah.
place. It's kind of hard in those instances to find something unique. And yeah, when you go to a lot of indie shows out there, it seems like a lot of matches that are kind of just thrown together. There's no
Yeah.
real story behind a lot of it. I mean, a lot of promotions out there, yeah, they have their main stories that they're telling in a show, but the vast majority of it kind of just thrown together. So
Yeah.
seeing that, and I was just thinking the whole getting to tell the promos there live in the show in front of the audience. Yeah, I can't think of too many places out there that have that sort of a presentation, besides maybe some of the NWA shows even
Yeah.
today. I mean, especially back in the day. But
Mhm.
I mean, they're even, from the little I've been able to see, still doing that today. So it's very unique in wrestling to see that.
And that's kind of the part that, like, Tony really pushes on, trying to, he wants to be different, you know what I'm saying? So like, that's definitely one of my main companies I work for. Another company I work on a regular basis with is Alternative Combat Wrestling.
Ah,
They definitely invest a lot in their stories as well. When it comes to, they like to do continuous storylines where it's like, you might, like, I've worked with ACW for a while, and they've done 6 7 8 month storylines, drawn out from the beginning to the end. And I've enjoyed being able to work with them as well, because I mean, honestly, man, like, I really, I try to be as humble as I can, because I'm blessed to be here, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't people don't have to pay money to see me, and I'm thankful that they do, because I work really hard on my craft to be as good as I can be and be as entertaining as I can be. And I put on the same type of performance, whether I'm wrestling in front of 5 people or if I'm wrestling in front of 500 or 5,000, it doesn't matter. And I really am thankful to have the opportunities to be able to like come on your podcast or go and perform in front of people, for especially like for benefit shows, because any way that I can give back to show my appreciation, and at the same time being able to do what I love to do, is always a win-win for me. You know what I'm saying?
oh, most definitely. And you bringing up, before I go into a benefit show here, you bring up Alternative Combat Wrestling, who, I mean, yeah, I've had a couple people on from there, and the whole story. I remember we talked about former guest Johnny Badger, him and a former opponent of yours, Cade Seidel. I
It's
don't know if I'm
it,
pronouncing it right.
it's Seidel. It
Seidel.
messes a lot of people up because they see Matt
Seidel.
Sedell,
Yeah.
and when they see him, they think because it's like the same name, but he always pronounces it Cade Sedell. So,
Sedell.
oh
Okay.
no, it's Cade Seidel for him, but it's Matt
Seidel.
Sedell for AEW. So,
Yeah.
and it always messes people up because I talking to Cade, that's like his number one kicker is that like when you talk with people, every single person that calls him by name, they're like, oh yeah, Matt Sedell or Cade Sedell, and he's like, no, Seidel, Cade Seidel. He's gonna point that out if you talk to him and you say, hey, what's up, man? It's Cade
Uh,
Seidel. So you know.
I'm I'm actually recording with him. I'm wanting to say tomorrow.
Yep. So it's I promise you, when you record with him, guaranteed when he's going to tell everybody it's Seidel, not Sedell. So yeah, you'll hear.
I'll definitely have to remember that because it's either tomorrow or Thursday as of recording this that I'm recording with him. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to remember that.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, I remember him and Johnny Badger have a little thing going there right now. That's kind of like I'm trying to remember how it went. Like I think it was Cade and him were like together, but then was it Cade turned on him?
So basically, what happened was initially Johnny was a commentator at Alternative Combat Wrestling
Yep.
initially, and he was a commentator where uh basically I was the first ACW champion. And when I won the championship for the company, Johnny was trying to persuade me to like basically they did this whole angle where it was like he was trying to persuade me to like join forces with him and that he could take me to greater heights. And I was like, nah, man, this is my territory, my show. I'm going to run it how I want to run it. I don't need like to cheat to win or anything like that. And Johnny basically, he was like, all right, well, cool. If you're not gonna, if you're not gonna go along with it, then he ended up going and partnering with Cade, and they formed their little faction of Ego. And Ego came in there and basically spent the whole time working this whole time to where they could take the belt off of me. So then Cade ended up beating me. We fought in a street fight. It was a big street fight match, and I ended up losing the belt to him. He won because of having help. Johnny, of course, worked the whole, see, I told you you could have been here, but you didn't because you were too worried about the fans instead of worrying about making more money or having a championship, yada, yada, yada. Eventually, he ended up having a whole issue with Cade because there was a whole controversy between them, and it involved it involved a bunch of different. There was a bunch of different other wrestlers that were involved in it at the time, but they had a big controversy, and Badger ended up turning on Cade with the rest of the faction. The whole faction turned on Cade because once me and Cade ended up building up through to a big blow off match where we fought again, but this time it was in a 30-minute Iron Man match, which was probably one of the hardest matches I think I've ever wrestled in the last like several years I've been wrestling, and it's definitely hard. That's not an easy type of match to do.
Yeah.
And I ended up beating him, winning the belt back. And once I won the belt back, then obviously Badger was like, you're worthless. You can't even beat CJ, blah, blah, blah. And because Cade's whole deal on that was like, he's like, when it started out, it was, I told him, I said, you can't beat me by yourself. You have to have help. Cade's like, I don't need help. I can beat you, just me. And I'm like, okay, prove it. So then he banned the rest of them from ringside for the match. So then when we had the match, I beat him. I win the belt back. And then Johnny argues with Cade, like, you shoot all of us away from ringside, you would still be champion right now, but you're prideful. You're too confident in yourself. Now you lost the match. So then they basically did the whole, we're turning on you. You're not worth the time vibe. So now Cade and Johnny are having their whole big boom to boom to boom back and forth. Meanwhile,
I
I'm staying out of it because I ain't got nothing to do with it. Like I was like, hey man, you should have never joined him to begin with.
no, I can totally get it. So it was kind of the opposite of the way for some reason I had it in my head.
I feel you.
But yeah, no, I remember I talked to Johnny Badger there. I'm wanting to say it was right before that event that you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that was when
Right
we
close
actually
to it.
recorded, and I think it came out after because I
Yeah,
remember in this post that he shared, it was talking about things changed and blah, whatever it was. I
because see,
can't remember that far back. I can barely remember what I had for damn lunch.
and see that's the thing with Johnny is that when you look at Johnny as a performer, he's the best type of manager when it comes to like he makes you hate him, which he's doing his job. That's what he's supposed
Okay,
to do.
yeah.
And it's so crazy to me how charismatic Johnny is because Johnny is not like when you see him act like Johnny Badger at a show or an event, that's him as a person. Like Johnny is naturally that charismatic and that, he's not really like if you see him outside of a wrestling show, you're like, man, you're just funny to be around because like some of the remarks that he says just makes you laugh. And I remember with him and Cade having their whole controversy, I remember Cade saying a comment to him where he's like he was going to drop kick him out of an airplane or something, and that just really stuck out to me because I was like, that is so like you can hear that and visually picture that so much, like,
Yeah.
and I'm just like,
Oh, yeah.
so I mean, it's just entertaining watching them go back and forth between especially with the charisma that Johnny has mixed with the experience Cade has is very entertaining.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, I've been able to see some stuff here or there, so I can totally see where you were saying there. Now, we talked about a benefit show, with the children's home, but
Mhm.
there's also one that I saw a poster for on Facebook, October 6th,
Yes.
that's going to be featuring a legend, the Barbarian.
Yeah. So basically, I do. That's another company that I work for on a regular basis is Wrestling with Purpose. Now, Wrestling with Purpose is almost every one of their shows, to my understanding, are always benefit shows of some kind. Like somehow the money's going to like an athletic booster, or they're going to a high school, or they're going to somebody that to raise money that with somebody with like some kind of like this very ill or something like that, and they need help with medical bills and stuff. And so October 6th, I will be at Wrestling with Purpose because I do, like I said, I try my best to give back and do a lot of benefit shows because I feel like, once again, going back into it, especially shows that deal with like somebody that if they have cancer or they're struggling with that kind of treatment. Because I told you earlier, my mom and my granny, we used to sit around and watch wrestling every week. Well, as my granny got older, she ended up passing away with cancer, and she was a massive wrestling fan. And I swore that ever since that happened, that I was going to all these shows that I do were going to be partially for her because I'm not going to I'm not, if I can help somebody else in this pain, because I know what I went through and my family went through seeing it. And especially not just an emotional strain, but a financial strain as well.
Yeah.
If I can go and put on a really good match and bring more people in and raise money for people with that same situation, then I'm going to do everything I can for that. And Wrestling with Purpose is a good outlet for that. So I do try to get as many bookings with them as I can and try to give back in that way.
That is awesome. I know I I haven't had the opportunities much of giving back as much as I want to, because with my show I want to give back to wrestling as much as it's given to me. And you talked about with your granny and dedicating a lot to her, and that me, I don't tend to talk about it too much anymore on the show, but my wife and I were pregnant. We were going to be having twin girls. They, long story short, born premature, only made it a week. I like one of the only breaks I took from the show was right after they passed. And like there was that period where I didn't know if I was going to still be doing it. But then I got to thinking, my little girls might not be with me anymore, but they wouldn't want daddy to be a quitter. So I boom, jump full force back into it.
Absolutely.
And if I can help at the very least take somebody's mind off of stuff for that little bit that they're paying attention to my show, boom, I'll take it. Then if I can give back financially at some point, by all means I will.
Absolutely. I definitely respect that, because that's very similar to how, the hand that I was dealt. And I mean, like, honestly, I just, like I told you previously, I just want to give back as much as I can and be as entertaining as I can be, and help as much as I can, because it's kind of like you said, wrestling doesn't owe me anything. Wrestling was here before I was here, and wrestling's going to be here after I'm gone. But the thing is that it's, once again, going into seminars that I've been to and hearing a lot of like big name people talk about stuff with, wrestling doesn't owe you anything. It's what you do for wrestling. And it's not always as cut and dry as, well, you go up and you donate money, or you go up and do this. It can be like, it don't even have to necessarily be somebody that's struggling with an illness or something like that. If you go to a show and you go and you're clapping hands around the ring, and this one little kid comes up and says, "You're my favorite wrestler," well, you just made that kid's entire night, because like, it's like you're doing that, going out of your way to talk to that person. And it's like, to you, you're spending 3 minutes to talk to them. But to them, they're going to go home and they're going to talk to their family, and they're going to be like, "Oh, he talked to me and he took a picture with me." And and that's the stuff that really resonates with me, that, hey, it's not about you. It's about, everybody else. And I do want to, best way I can put it is, there's a guy that I wrestle a lot of events with. His name is Trey Havoc, and he made a comment that I saw. And when I saw him say this, it really stuck with me. And I tell people this all the time now, because I heard him say it and I pass it on. I'm not wrestling for me anymore. When I first started wrestling, I was wrestling for me, and it was because it's what I wanted to do. Now, granted, that is still part of why I'm wrestling, but I'm wrestling for all the people that I know that ain't here anymore, that were wrestling or loved wrestling, and I'm going to wrestle for them in their spirit, just like I'm wrestling for me to push me. So that's just, I mean, and when he said that, I was like, man, look, I can't argue that. I'm in the same boat. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, most definitely. Now, I have two categories that I kind of like to round stuff off with, and I try to theme it towards the guests. And with you being from the Carolinas, there's a lot of wrestling history there. I mean, going way back, like I could, but one of the categories I have here, a little bit of a name game. Like I try to, like I said, theme it towards the guests. This one with the history, we're going with legends of the Carolinas. Some of these relatively recent legends, so we'll go there. So I name off the person, you give me some quick thoughts on them.
Okay.
First up, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
He's one of the, if not the greatest of all time, with everything that he's done. Every person he's wrestled, he has told a great story with. Whether it be Dusty Rhodes, Shawn Michaels. I mean, you could go as far back as Dusty, you could go as early as, like, up until now, Shawn Michaels, or even further. But he is a legend in everybody's mind, and I feel like you don't even have to like wrestling to know who Ric Flair is. But especially around here, you see a chop or you hear woo, and you're like, "Yep, Ric Flair, boy." Like, and he's definitely one of the people that have inspired me. The few times that I get to work heel on shows, he's one of my people that I do film study on, because I don't think there's many better people as a heel than he is.
Oh yeah, Ric Flair is definitely one of those guys that, like, he could play the face and he can get you to like him, but good Lord, there's a reason they called him the dirtiest player in the game.
The way he got in and out of his spots were what really captivated me with him. And it's like, I keep using that word because it just fits so good, but it's like the way he would get into just a regular cheat spot was not how everybody else did it. And it was like, that's what really made me pay attention to him, because like when he would hit somebody, like he's holding the ref and he throws the leg up and kicks them, when he does it, it just meant more than when somebody else did it, because the way he would make it so like personal. He would do it, and it just made you feel like, man, this guy hates this dude. Like, and it just playing into the whole telling a story, making it believable, because I feel like that happens in wrestling a lot today, where there's not a lot of believability in certain stories. Certain stories they tell, you're like especially like with Roman Reigns, like that great story, very long-term storytelling. But then
Yeah.
kind of how they did with Chad Gable, it's like you had this phenomenal match, and then now you're what? Like you had this great match with him, with Gunther,
Oh,
and
yep.
had this phenomenal match with Gunther, and now it's like they just totally forgot about that 2 weeks later, and it's like, how do you drop that? That could be your next big champion. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's
Oh,
just my
yeah.
personal opinion.
No, that's I have a little spin-off of the podcast where they call it My Two Cents, where I'm like literally giving opinions on different stuff. And that one I hadn't really thought of, but hey, it that was a killer match though.
Yes.
Now, next up, guy very synonymous with Ric Flair. And, I talked a little bit about being a fan of the grit, the old school, that just intense. This guy very much so. The enforcer, Arn Anderson.
Oh yeah. Um. So Arn Anderson, the honestly, the as soon as you say his name, the first thing I think of is Spinebuster. I don't think you can think of him without seeing that. And I feel like he's kind of like his own entity when it comes to in the ring, because when he wrestled and you watched his matches, not only was he great at playing a character, he was so good at making you believe that, like, not only is he wrestling this man, he's fighting this man. Like, he's there when he wrestled, it meant something. And you would watch his matches specifically because you're like, this man is out to kill this other man, and it made you want to watch, and you couldn't turn away, because you would never go to the bathroom during an Arn Anderson match. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like, wouldn't
oh,
happen. That was
oh,
never like, if you had to pee, you was going to hold it for Arn Anderson. Like
oh,
that's how it
you'd
was.
see him come out. Yeah, no, most definitely.
So yes, going off of him, he's the spine buster. That's the first thing that pops in my mind. I can't think of something other than that would specify better.
Oh man, nobody did one like him. Like you knew when you saw Arn Anderson do a spine buster, you were wondering if he was actually going to be putting that guy through the damn ring.
Yeah,
Like
because I
he
mean,
looked like he could legit do that.
he was, and especially with the way it wasn't just the move itself, but it was his gestures. Like he would
Mm.
pull it out at the most opportune moment, and you would just be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because that was back in the day before you had a lot of more finishes. Now they, a lot of them now have the can hit them at any time, anywhere aspect. But back then you didn't have that a lot. A lot of the finishers they had back then were set up. But
Yeah,
up that spine buster out like a snake, and bam, and it's already hit. It's over. There wasn't no getting
yeah.
away from that. So that was one thing that really, when I study him, is I pay attention to the way he personifies himself around the ring
Oh,
to invest with the fans.
most definitely. And I think back to, I mean, recently, the RKO out of nowhere stuff that started way back with Arn and
Yes.
the way that spine buster could just bam and just out of nowhere. Most definitely. Next up, they're doing their thing right now, getting back in the swing of things. Matt and Jeff, the Hardys.
So obviously that's going to be a little easy for me on that one. So
Yeah.
I literally live from Cameron to me is probably 30 minutes, if that. So like I mean, I could drive to their house if I had to. And it's like Jeff Hardy was my idol growing up. That was the one that inspired me to wrestle growing up. Like honestly, I like Matt. Matt's cool, but Jeff was always the guy that both of them were. I love to watch them tag team, but Jeff was always, especially during when he was in his singles run in WWE, he was the guy that I just felt like when you say the Hardys, the first thing I think of is Extreme. I feel like they made the TLC match. I feel like
Yeah.
they brought a lot to the table. And I feel like that every person that they've wrestled, either together as a team or apart as singles, have made their opponents better wrestlers. Because
Yeah.
you look back in the day when the Hardys were doing these tag team matches, they were wrestling the Dudley Boys, they were wrestling Edge and Christian, they were wrestling, Benoit with Jericho, and there was all these, like, it was back before these guys were as big as they are now. So like when you think about the Hardy Boys, you think about the TLC match, you think about the way that they really define tag team wrestling in a way. Like they didn't take like they didn't change the way tag team wrestling was, but they took it and added their own little twist on it and made them like stand apart from everybody else, because especially with the way Jeff would just jump off of anything. Like Jeff's
Nope.
like I could picture Jeff just walking around and being like, "Yep, I jump off of that." And
I can see him saying that.
and with being obviously another person that stands out to me with that is Champagne, Marty Garner. Champagne's one of my buddies. I've known him for years, and he's good friends with the Hardys because he grew up with them during the whole Omega days and stuff like
Mm.
that. And with Marty, man, like some of the stuff you hear him tell me, like to tell you about with the Hardys, it's just like different places they've been, different things they've done, and it's just they just are their own. Like even though they're not in the Hall of Fame yet, I feel like they're going to be because
Oh
they've
yeah.
done so much. Like I said, together and apart, and I just Extreme. Like I said, you think about the Hardys, Extreme, TLC, tag team, and another big word is enigma keeps coming to
Mm.
mind because I just feel like that they're their own entity. Like when it comes to being like you have wrestling and then you have that, because even with the Hardys now, like people they say, oh well, they're still like look how old they are and they're still going the way they are. Jeff's still hitting the swanton, Matt's still hitting the twist of fate. I mean, even with like once in a blue moon, he'll drop out the leg, drop off the top, and it's like those are big moves, to be
Yeah.
hitting when you're been in the business this long, and it's crazy. They're just,
Oh.
like I said, overall one of the best tag teams in the entire division over the like, especially during my era of watching wrestling.
Oh, most definitely. And I can see a lot of things with. I mean, the both of them. I mean, Matt and his broken stuff was
Yeah,
awesome.
I love
And
that.
then,
It's so great.
oh yeah, and then you think back, and Jeff has always kind of been the more flashy of the two with the stuff. But I mean, they both have their appeal. They both done great things, and I'm loving seeing them back together.
Yes.
Last but not least for this category, another great tag team. I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling, as I've said a lot. These guys considered one of the best out there right now. FTR.
So that is, I knew you were going to say that because when you say FTR, the key word that comes to mind is like 80s retro. Like
Yeah.
it's the 80s retro because FTR from their psychology in the ring to the point where it's like every aspect of them makes sense. There's no, I feel like even though I've never met them in person, I feel like that there are what you see is what you get kind of guy. And I feel like that from their song to the way that they dress to the way that they work in the ring, they're doing a phenomenal job with bringing that old school wrestling and putting that new twist on. Because
Oh,
especially with the way Dax does, it's like there's no in the middle for him. He can go super fast like a cruiserweight. He can go slow and methodical like a big guy, like a powerhouse. He can do somewhat powerhouse moves. He can do technical. He's a very good technical wrestler.
yep.
And me, that's kind of my style of wrestling anyway. I love technical wrestling, and I try my best to be in that department of when I do my matches. So anybody that can do like that kind of chaining and technical wrestling like he can really stands out to me. So FTR 80s retro's got to be. That's got to be the key word, especially with the song, because their song's a whole vibe.
Oh no, most definitely. They very much give me the vibes, going back 80s, early 90s. They remind me very much of, you know, one of the other people in this category, Arn and Tully. I mean, Tully was their manager at one point, but the FTR definitely the way they team, their mindset, excuse me, definitely very much reminds me of the Arn and Tully teaming
Oh
together
yeah.
back.
It's definitely, and it's not even, it's funny you say that because it's not just the moves, it's the way that they present themselves in the ring. Like the
Yep.
way that they walk, the way that they do their circles, their lockups, the little fine tuning things is what really pushes them to look different than everybody else. Because people really get, I feel like that people get lost in trying to do the bigger moves, but they don't focus on the little things like, well, if you do a wrist lock but you do it this way, then it's like
Mm.
it stands out different. And even though it's just something so small and minute, everybody's like, oh, well, that was different than the other 5 wrist locks we saw tonight. And FTR is a great example of doing that a lot in their matches.
Oh, most definitely. Next category I have some random questions. Some might be wrestling related, some might not be. I give you the question, you give me the first answer that pops into your head.
Okay.
First one of the ones that I like to keep in here as much as possible because I love hearing the stories. Craziest in match moment for you?
Craziest in match moment. I remember I've got like, can I give you like 3 short ones?
Yeah, well, yeah, totally.
So one of them would be probably when it was me and Mark Hazard, rest his soul. Um me and him were doing a street fight for ACW, and we were building up this big match, this big blow off match for it. And I remember him and me talking about like, well, what are we going to do in this match? How are we going to stand out? Because, we really wanted to like blow the house off. We wanted to blow the roof off this place. And I remember sitting there and I was like, what can we do? And next thing I know, he comes walking in with a TV. And I'm like, it's like this little, like probably 15-inch flat screen TV that you look like you would go to Walmart and buy. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, we're using it tonight. I'm like, why? And he's like, because it broke and I can't use it no more. So I figured might as well get some use out of it. And I'm like, I mean, whatever you want to do. And then there's a perfect clip on my YouTube channel of him just like eating that TV. Like he goes to like shoot me off. It's like I reverse. You just see him go head first into that TV. Wow. And then the TV like somewhat falls out of the corner. He falls down. You see me grab the TV and I'm like, bam, drop it on his back. And he's like, he tells me after the match, he's like, yeah, I really shouldn't have brought that TV. Like, just like, so like that was definitely one of them that stood out to me. And then another one was the oh my God. So me and Cade, when we did our street fight, it and it's funny because it's like it's always affiliated when you do these no DQ matches. Anytime it's a no DQ match, that's the ones that like stand out. But like we wanted to do something different. We didn't want to do like thumbtacks. We wanted to do something different that stuck out. So I went to Walmart. I picked up like this whole big container of these little tiny rubber dinosaurs. And I'm like, this is perfect. This will get over with the kids. This will get over with the fans. It's different. And it's like, so I go out, Cade's over here. I grab these little dinosaurs and I pour them in the ring. I'm like, oh, you want to play games, Cade? Well, we'll play games. I'm pouring all this stuff out in the ring. And of course, it ends up backfiring on me. So I end up going up for a move. He catches me, slams me down on these dinosaurs. And that part was like, ow, this hurt. But that's not the funny part of the story. The funny part of the story was where I had a submission locked in on Cade, and he grabs this tiny triceratops, and he just takes that with the little horns poking out the bottom of his hand, and he just stabs me in the leg with this triceratops. And like I still literally have like a tiny little scar like this big on my leg where he stabbed me in the leg with this. And he was like, well, I had to get you to let go somehow. And I'm like, so I literally went after the match, and I still to this day have that Triceratops in my car that he stabbed me with, and I keep it in my car. And anytime my wrestling friends ride with me and they say, why do you have a tiny dinosaur in your car? And I'm like, because I got stabbed with that by Cade at a wrestling show. So that, that stands out as a one of those, like, that's one of those moments that I'm not going to forget. I would say that would probably be my two main ones. I don't really have another one that comes to mind off the top of my head. Um, I remember, I know definitely those two because they were just very comical and funny. I feel like there was another time I was wrestling a friend of mine. His name is Angels, and I remember he gave me a concussion during the match, and it was like we were doing a trade spot, trading forearms, and he just, like, you just see it on camera, like pow, and you just see me like go like real misty eyed, and he was like, "Oh shit!" Like he's just sitting there, and like he comes off the ropes, and I'm like trying to trip him, and you just see my hand go by his leg like this, and he's like, looks at me like, what's going on? He's like, man, you missed me. I was like, which one of you? And he was like, oh shit. He's like, so that was a whole, like, that's definitely my three. That's got to be my three, like, biggest crazy stupid things that have happened, like with wrestling. And it's like I said, it's always the no DQ stuff, man. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
I can go wrestle 100 normal matches, and you're going to be like, there might be some little funny moments here and there, but those no DQ matches is always like, we're going to do something stupid tonight for no reason. We're going to do something stupid.
Oh yeah. I've witnessed a few crazy ones myself. Oh God. One was in this promotion's version of the Money in the Bank ladder match where one of my friends had this guy on him like Sheamus and the white noise where like the head's down here.
Oh yeah.
And I see him, I'm on the other side of the ring from him, and I can see him looking down at the ladder. I'm like, oh God, no. I see him look, the jumps, ladder folds, and I'm like, ow.
Mm-mm.
And one actually happened with a former guest of mine, Jake Christ.
Oh wow.
It was in actually my first ever legit death match, and not one of those that's like just a hardcore match that just slapped death match on there. It was at Sammy Callahan's promotion, Wrestling Revolver, and it ended by them taking 4 folding chairs, bridging 2 panes of glass on there, and then it gets worse. I see Bobby Olson, another former guest, his Jake's right hand man, rolls in, and I see him pull something out of his pocket, and I'm like, oh, it was a thing of lighter fluid.
Oh God.
They lit the glass on fire.
That's crazy. Yep, that's definitely some deathmatch stuff. Now, see, I got to tip my hat to that because wrestling wise for me, like, I love wrestling, I love technical wrestling, I love all styles of wrestling, and I respect all styles of wrestling. But the deathmatch stuff is definitely not for me. Like, I do the occasional street fight, I do the occasional, like, like the Iron Man match or something like that. That's like different than normal everyday matches. Death matches, I think I'm gonna have to pass on that, just because to me, I'm like, I'd like to have a long career, and I don't think I'm gonna get that from doing that.
Yeah. No, I can totally understand. I know I've been lucky enough to be able to talk with a bunch of big names in deathmatch wrestling. I actually have something that I have autographed by one of them, one of my first deathmatch guests, Alex Colon, signed ring-worn kick pads of his.
Oh, nice.
That I actually found when I actually get them displayed. I found a picture of him doing like a double knee looking thing into a pane of glass onto a guy that I'm like, okay, that picture is going in there with them.
Oh yeah, you got to do like a whole shadow box vibe with like the kick pad with like him, like a picture of him going through that with it signed. That'll look nice.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely doing that. got a handful of autograph stuff. I got some up there. I I'm proud of my little collection right
Oh
now.
yeah, yeah, for sure. One of my biggest people that I got to meet at WrestleCade was Mick Foley, and
Ooh, I got to meet him once.
I'm telling you, like that was one of the times that I was like, I've got to take advantage while I'm here to, get the picture with him with the mankind mask on, and it was
Oh
like
yeah.
you can't talk about hardcore stuff and not have Mick Foley in the conversation.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I've got, as far as wrestling related stuff, my whole top shelf here for those that will watch on YouTube. I got signed figures from, Hangman Page,
Oh yeah,
Lance Archer. My most recent one that I got signed, I actually got to meet Rikishi,
oh
and I got
nice,
him to sign a Head Shrinker Fatu one.
that's cool.
I'm rather proud of that. But yeah, I've got to meet some of my favorites. So I've considered myself very lucky that there's one guy that I'm like, I don't know if whenever I meet him, I don't know if I'll be able to get a word out. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah,
Like
that
I would probably just be like, hi.
see, and that's one of my big, uh, I guess people that like I'm not going to say got me into wrestling, but it's one of the people that I definitely watch to study how they wrestle, and it's because the way that he portrays himself in the ring is very, I don't know what the word is. It's very fluid with it fits him as a person plus it fits him as a character, and it's like watching Stone Cold is like he's another guy that's just in his own category. You're never gonna. I don't feel like you're ever gonna have another Stone Cold. You might have
Oh,
somebody that does Stone Cold like things, but you're never gonna have another Stone Cold.
oh, most definitely. And going off the Stone Cold here, one other question in this category that I like to keep in here because I feel like I would feel weird if I didn't have this in here with a name of a show like Drinking at Moe's.
Mhm.
Favorite drink, whether it be alcoholic or non or one of each. Because I know I've had people on that don't drink for
Yeah,
one reason or another.
right. So I do drink occasionally, but I'm a social drinker. So like I
Oh,
drink periodically, but I don't drink a lot just because I don't really. I mean, I when I go out with like a group of friends and they want to throw back a couple, then fine, I will. But I don't like make it a goal to like drink all the time. But when I do drink, I like my favorite personal drink would be rum and Coke. Like I love like Captain Morgan with Coke or Captain Morgan with like Dr. Pepper,
mm,
and that's like my favorite like just chill drink. Like I'm just gonna sit here and casually drank with the boys or something. If it wasn't alcoholic, I mean, a lot of the times I drank Celsius, like the little Celsius energy drinks. I've been hooked on them a lot here recently because I feel like that they're good clean energy. Like I get that like boost to like go, but at the same time I'm not like I don't have that crash afterwards. But
that's always good
I
because yeah,
don't
some of those energy drinks they kind of get that way.
Yeah, I don't drink a lot of sodas because of the sugar content, but like I said, when I'm drinking, if I'm drinking like rum and Coke, then it's like I throw that out the window because I'm like, well, hell, I'm already drinking, might as well enjoy it. Because I don't
Oh
I don't
yeah.
drink a lot of like alcoholic tasting drinks. Like I don't like when I drink rum and Coke, I like the taste of it, but I don't really like the taste of like beer. I don't like the taste of like certain liquors. But most of the time if I get a drink, it's like a mixed drink or a rum and Coke.
No, I can totally understand, and you bring up like yeah, I do drink probably more soda than I should.
Mm.
Big Dr. Pepper guy, and you bring up Dr. Pepper. One mix that I kind of stumbled on it one time. But I'm like, damn, this tastes good. I had
Mm.
like a shooter of Jack Honey.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, why don't I try this? And then I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Yeah, the Jack Daniel's Tennessee Fire is really good too. It's like
Mm.
Fireball, but it doesn't. It's like Fireball, but it's like a little bit of a different taste. But if you have a lot of congestion, like with your throat or your sinuses, and you drink a shot of that, it'll clear that up quick.
Oh, That's good because I mean I do have some issues with that. Now, next up, I do not consider myself a very picky eater at all. Like I'll try just about anything, but
Right.
I do have some things that I would definitely put on like a least favorite. What would you say is a least favorite food for you?
Probably Thai food. I really don't like Thai food. I don't like it. It's too spicy for me, and it just feels like when I eat it, I just get like a real like bloated feeling, and just makes me feel bad, and I just feel lazy and don't want to do anything. So I really don't eat a lot of Thai food.
I can understand. I know my wife loves Thai food, and there's been this one place that we get stuff from periodically, and it's definitely been kind of a feeling out process. I like, okay, this place's spice level might be a little different from this one, so it's kind of a feeling out process. Like, okay, I'm not gonna go higher than here because the last time it did a number on me.
Yeah, right. It's like you got to
So,
base it off the little icons, like the little chilies. It's like if there's three or more, you don't need to eat it. Like
oh yeah,
you got to go off of like if it sounds spicy and it's got more than three little chili symbols beside it, leave it alone. Leave it on the menu.
yeah. I've done one food challenge ever, and it was the Buffalo Wild Wings Blazing Wing Challenge. Out here in Omaha every year, College World Series, they had that set up outside of the stadium. And I was just like, yeah, hell, why not? I finished, and they don't give you water till like a little while after.
Mhm.
That stuff could have been ice cold. It felt like it was coming out of a coffee pot when I drank it.
Mm, mm.
One and only food challenge I will ever do, at least on the spicy level of stuff.
Right.
No, I'm not doing that again. But least favorite for me, and there's been some wide ranging reactions when I tell this one, but deviled eggs. I
So deviled eggs for me, my personal experience with that is it depends on who makes them. Because like if you there's I've went and had deviled eggs by one person, absolutely loved them. Like my mom makes great deviled eggs. I love my mom's deviled eggs. But then I can go eat somebody else's deviled eggs and it just tastes bad. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like they're doing a different recipe, they're just not adding something in it, but it's all depends on who eats it and it's like the texture of it because some people do different textures in it.
that I think is the thing with me because I think it's a texture thing with me because I tried one time and like I about gagged.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been kind of a running joke at family gatherings ever since when they have deviled eggs. They're like, hey, you want to try this? I'm like, get that thing out of my
Yeah,
face.
it's like I prefer not. Do you like having clean shoes? Because I
Yep. No, I've definitely been there. Now, last but not least, the thing I always like to send this category off with best advice for anybody wanting to get into wrestling.
oh Lord. Uh this one put me on the spot. With this one, I think this is probably the hardest question you've asked. Definitely caught me off guard with this one because it's I don't ever consider myself somebody like I don't people ask me for advice and it's weird when they do because I don't feel like I know enough to really give advice. But if I had to give advice to somebody in the business, it would be probably three things. One would be professional. And I don't just mean the way you look, I don't just mean the way you act, but like the way you present yourself on social media, the way that you present yourself when you go up to people, show up, shake everybody's hand. It don't matter if you've seen them four other times that week at different shows. Go up to them and shake their hand because you never know when the last time you that's going to be the last time you get to shake their hand
Mm.
and it shows them that it's that's the old school mentality. Go shake their hand. Social media, present yourself in a correct way. Don't get involved in the politics or the all these other aspects of stuff. If you're a wrestler, you're here to entertain. Don't nobody care. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to see you wrestle. They want to see you talk about wrestling. You want to go on there and cut promos talking about somebody else. Absolutely. I don't care what your views on this is, that is, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Professionalism. I feel like that's very underrated in today's society, and I feel like that's what affects a lot of people from getting signed, is because that plays a factor. Number two would be, I tell people you need to, and I've actually had to tell people this, you got to figure out, do you want to do this as a hobby, or do you want to do this as a career, or do you want to do this as and go as far as you can go with it? Because in wrestling, you make your own ceiling. There is no figurative of ceiling. Like, even if you get signed to WWE, how far in WWE do you want to go? Do you want to be a jobber that comes out and gets beat up in the first couple matches? Do you want to be main eventing with the belt? Do you want to be, even if you don't have a belt, do you want to be the most entertaining guy? Because you don't have to have a belt to be entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And a big piece of advice I give people is that's something they have to figure out. Because if you're just wanting to do this as a weekend thing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of people that do it. But you got to know that if this is what you want to do, then there's only a certain level that you're going to go with it. The third thing that I would say, and probably the most important piece of advice, is never give up on your dreams, because anything is possible in wrestling. And as I said earlier, it's not always being a great athlete. It's about being in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a buddy of mine who plays music. He told me that the way he explained it, when I asked him, was he ever going to get signed to like a record label? He told me, man, all it takes is a good song and the right person to hear it. And I took that and I implemented that in my wrestling. And I said, it just takes a good match and one person to see it. And
that is true.
so I tell people that don't underestimate yourself. Don't cut yourself short. Be as good as you can be. Don't give up on your dreams. Chase them as far as you can go. But at the end of the day, the best thing that you can do is work on your training to be safe and and tune up your stuff as good as you can. But then also, don't take it too seriously, man. Like, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a bigger name guy, which actually, fun fact, was I would say it was probably Adam Page at WrestleCade. When I talked to Hangman, I asked him, I said, hey man, as an up and coming indie wrestler, I want to know, how do I get to a bigger level? And he looked at me and he said, man, just be around for the ride. Enjoy it. Like, don't put too much seriousness in it and worrying about how far you're going to go. Worry more about enjoying being there and doing what you can, because he said that when he got into wrestling, he wasn't worried about like trying to get famous or trying to get signed. He was just worried about having fun and being as good as he can be, and he was going to go as far as he was able to go. And that was one of the things that really stuck with me. So I tell people and I encourage them, go as far as you can go and don't give up on yourself or your dreams, because like I said, one match and the right person to see it. And that's all it takes.
Oh yeah. No, all great advice. And the first thing you brought up there with the professionalism and shaking everybody's hand, it reminded me of when my show, we got to be a part of the Warrior Wrestling Show and Fan Fest when they were in St. Louis little over a year ago. I'm trying to remember back when that was. But at the Fan Fest, before the fans started coming in, and these two guys in particular came in, both from New Japan, but Alex Coughlin and Yuyamura. I always get that name fumbled. But each of them were like the first two out of everybody, to whether you were there, you're a podcaster, whether you were ring crew, fellow wrestler, they went by and shook everybody's hand. They made sure they went to everybody. And
Absolutely.
like you said, that puts a good impression on people. That, to me, that's one thing that stands out to me to this day. That was like, wow, that made me feel like a little at ease, because I was kind of a little out of my element at the time. My first big thing that I did. And those two guys, hell, they're both doing amazing things right now. And that was oh, go ahead.
That plays into another thing with the professionalism. Another, like, you just triggered my brain to think of something else. Being humble. being humble is definitely something else that I would stress by you saying that they went around and shook everybody's hands, not just the wrestlers. They shook podcasters, referees, ring crew. And being humble, I feel like is very that's very underrated in today's society also, because people get these in their mind that they win these championships on certain companies, and then they think, oh, well, I'm over, brother, like I got it. And it's like, man, like respectfully, like we're all together, we all work together. And I try, like I told you before, I try to be as humble as possible, and I try to encourage other people to be that way, because I promise you, being humble and being respectful in this business is going to get you a hell of a lot further than acting like that you're like, I mean, I've heard living the gimmick. I respect living the gimmick, but at the same time, brother, we're on the same show. Like at the end of the day, being humble, being respectful is going to get you a lot further in this business.
Oh, most definitely. Well, that is about all I have. But before we go, where can people find you social media wise? So if they don't already have their eyes on the show,
That's it,
they
man.
can go ahead and get them there.
So, the main platforms that I'm on currently are Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. All of them are at WholeEvansShow. That's where you can find me, and that's Whole Evans Show, like EVANS. Um, so it's Whole Evans Show. Um, that's my like at symbol for Facebook, Instagram, and I do have Twitter, but I don't really use it as much as I really should, because I it's hard to keep every platform going back to back to back. But there, you can find me on any of those. I post all of my promos, all of my flyers of upcoming events that I'm going to be at, and also I post anything. If people want to hit me up about buying merch, they can message me on there, and I send it to them. The other link that I would refer people to is that if you are trying to become a wrestler and you're in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area or fairly close, I would send them to 26 Wrestling Academy, which is the place that I train under Hang Time Tony James, and definitely best training place that I feel like can get you started, learn everything that you need to learn, being safe. So look that up, 26 Wrestling Academy, and then like I said, that's pretty much it, man. Often imitated, never duplicated. Mr. Main Event in the show, baby. That's all I got. That's it.
All right. No, we'll make sure we get all that in the description. But like I said, that's about all I have. I can hear my dogs rustling around upstairs, so I better get to checking on them. But
Got you.
thank you for taking the time to talk to me tonight, and best of luck with some of those upcoming shows you got going.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I look forward to possibly coming back again sometime.
Oh, you're welcome back anytime.